Thank you, Leo, and it's a real honor to take part in this discussion. My name is Joe McCartin. I'm with the Kalmanovitz Initiative for Labor and the Working Poor at Georgetown University, and we're involved in support of a community labor coalition movement right now called Bargaining for the Common Good, and my colleagues are circulating a sign-on letter that explains more about that movement. So I'll just talk a little bit about that as our involvement in labor community organizing and bargaining. This movement is really based on, I think, three premises. The first is that the problems that labor needs to fix include not only organizing, not only new organizing, but collective bargaining itself and the way bargaining works. And our notion is that it's breaking down in both the public and private sector. Second, that it's hard to think about reviving the labor movement overall or in the private sector unless we can preserve what we have in the public sector. And right now we know it's under attack. It's under serious attack. And the third premise is that if we are to stabilize and turn back that attack in the public sector, we have to change the way we're bargaining in the public sector. We have to change the way we're bargaining in ways that make bargaining more about the common good. Essentially, we have to change bargaining because we won collective bargaining in the public sector at a time when union density in the private sector was high. Now that it's not, our public sector is being isolated and now open to attack. In Wisconsin, for example, we know that collective bargaining was won there, the first state to win it, when union density was 40%. When it sunk to 7%, it became impossible, as we saw, to defend it against Scott Walker's attack. We have to bargain differently in an environment where so few private sector workers are organized. We have to bargain in ways that make it hard for employers and politicians to turn taxpayers against union members and to portray the union movement as a special interest. We also need to change bargaining in the public sector because when we created public sector collective bargaining in this country, the economy looked very different than it currently looks. Perhaps the most important change over the last 40 years in that respect is the financialization of our economy and the way financialization has changed the playing field on which all public sector workers and their unions have to operate. And we have to address collective bargaining in ways that account for these two things. That is, the lack of union membership in the private sector, which forces us in a way to deepen our community alliances if we're going to repel these attacks. And we have to find ways of bringing to the bargaining table the problems that are being created by financialization in our economy. So those are the ideas that lead to this project called Bargaining for the Common Good. And it's a project that says that unless we can deal with the fact that in Los Angeles, the city is spending more on fees to Wall Street than it's spending to maintain its city streets, then how can we bargain effectively in that city? Unless in Chicago, we can deal with the fact that schools are being closed there by a school system that lost about an estimated $300 million in credit default swap deals that went bad, deals that were foisted upon the school district by bankers who knew that these were bad deals. Unless we can deal with those kinds of things, how can we really bargain? Unless we can deal with the fact that in community after community, we have corporations that are getting tax abatements and tax cuts promising to create jobs and they're not creating them. Unless we can create mechanisms to attack those problems, we can't bargain effectively in the public sector. So bargaining for the common good is about bringing unions and community organizations together to work in partnership, to develop demands together, demands that involve more than a transactional relationship between the union and the community, in which labor understands that the very demands it brings to the table have to be demands owned by the community and community organizations. And so this is the approach of this effort. It's a network effort. It came together in a conference at Georgetown in May that we helped to sponsor, but it's something that preceded that because other unions have been pushing in this direction for some amount of time, AFT being among them. And the four major public sector unions, AFSCME, AFT, NEA, and SEIU, helped support this conference we did in May. The sign-on letter that you can see circulating now includes local union leaders and community organization leaders from around the country, and this is really their movement. And so this is the exciting thing we're involved in now, is just being in support of that movement, which I'm happy to talk about more as the discussion continues.